The first pizza that we're gonna do in this class is the classic pizza marinara. This is that beautiful Neapolitan dough that we made. You made a dough, if you followed the recipe with the dough, you would have made a dough that's about probably 295 grams if you just divided that recipe into 2 dough balls. You'll see that as I'm going around, I'm using the pads of my fingers to kind of dimple, leaving about 1 finger from the edge. And then once I get to that point, I flip it over, go to the middle, and do the same thing the opposite way. I try to do this both ways with flipping, turn it, and do the same thing the opposite way. The idea is that I'm trying to get this kind of waffle pattern. And with that waffle pattern, all those fermentation gases that have been built up over the time will sit inside kind of locked in. So anywhere you could see through my fingers will be an air bubble. If you put this in the refrigerator overnight, this dough should have stayed out for about 90 minutes to 2 hours until it reaches a minimum temperature of about 60 degrees. Mine is sitting right now probably about 65 to 68. And you'll notice that as I start stretching, this method is called the slap technique. I'm actually slapping and turning my hand, causing the dough to move in a circle until I get to that 12-inch mark. From there, I'm gonna hold it up. You can actually see how many beautiful air bubbles are locked in now into this dough. I'm gonna put a little bit of dusting flour on the bench and I'm gonna lay this out. The marinara pizza is super simple. Tomato sauce, garlic, oregano, olive oil, and that's it. It's so beautiful, so simple. A lot of people sometimes will make these as like their appetizer pizza, or it's a beautiful base, especially if people don't eat cheese. So maybe your vegan friends and everything, this is a great option because there's nothing on here that's gonna offend them. This is that tomato sauce, that Neapolitan sauce, which just inside has sea salt and those Italian tomatoes that I use that I hand crushed. This spoon is probably about 3 ounces worth, maybe about 2.5 ounces worth of sauce. I'm gonna go right into the center and I'm gonna give maybe another half a spoon right here and I'm gonna give this a turn. The reason being that there's nothing basically holding this dough down. We don't want this to puff up like a pita when this goes into the oven. So because it doesn't have any cheese on it, it doesn't really have any weight. You'll notice that I'm spending a little bit of time making sure that I leave 1 finger from the edge undisturbed. Tomatoes have a lot of sugar inside them naturally, so those sugars, if they reach the outside edge of the cornicione, the sugars on this dough will actually cause that edge to burn and it doesn't look very nice. So we want to use about twice as much sauce as far as on a basic margherita pizza. And it might look like we use a little too much sauce, but I promise you it's not a lot of sauce. We really just don't want to see a lot of those white streaks, and the sauce is what's holding this dough down. The garlic is always used fresh. We never pre-chop this, and we definitely wouldn't want to use that stuff that's already chopped up in the little jars at the grocery store. You can either chop the garlic really fine like this just before it goes on the pizza, or a lot of the old Neapolitan pizza makers will actually take this and they'll chop it into big pieces, like these chunks, like this. Those big chunks, just to show you what they look like, those big chunks would be on this pizza kind of just like this in the center. And the reason they put them in the center is because the first place that you bite a slice of pizza is from the middle, not from the edge. So the focus when you do a Neapolitan pizza in this manner, it's always that we focus on the middle and work our way to the outside. The next ingredient is oregano. Now this is really good oregano from Sicily. You can find it from Sicily, you could find it from Calabria. There's different spots. It's on the branch so that it's kind of preserved in its natural state when it's dried. Sometimes when you get the stuff that's already broken out and it's in those little canisters, you have no idea how long that stuff's been in there. This is at its full potency. All those essential oils of the oregano are still in here. And all I got to do is just give this a little squeeze, just like this. And you'll see how easy it is to get the oregano on here. And the last bit that we're gonna do is just the olive oil. I'm using something called an oliera, but the idea is that I'm looking for a pattern that looks something like the number 6. That's about the amount of oil that I want on here. The oil is gonna help kind of keep everything flowing nice and beautifully inside the oven, but the oil is also gonna give us some flavor, and that's the whole point of this. I built this pizza directly on the table. And now I know maybe a lot of you out there freaked out when you saw that, but this is one of those life skills if you're gonna make Italian pizzas. I'm using a perforated peel. I'm only gonna use whatever flour I can hold between 2 fingers. Literally, that's all the flour. And the reason is because in an oven that's very hot like this, flour is combustible. And if there's a ton of flour underneath your pizza, the bottom of your pizza is gonna look burnt before it ever has a chance to bake. Now in the Neapolitan method, we will put the peel. I'm gonna support the peel on the oven right here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the pizza from the cornicione and I'm gonna pull the pizza to the peel and I'm gonna adjust it into a circle. And it literally is that simple. Now, when you go into the oven, the idea is that you're gonna find a spot in the oven, stop and pull back very quickly. I want you to think of the magician with all the tablecloth with all the glasses. That's how fast we're gonna go in. I'm gonna find my stop, and literally pull straight back. You saw how small that little movement was as I pulled, and I dropped a pretty perfect circle inside the oven. In just a little bit here, you're gonna notice that the outside edge of this pizza is gonna start to puff up. This is your pala. The pala is used to pick up the pizza and put it into the oven. It's perforated so any extra flour left over can go through these holes and it doesn't end up inside the oven. The other peel is this small round one, and we call this the palettino. The palettino is the only peel that we would use to turn the pizza. Now from here, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna find the spot from the edge, move my way into the center, and I'm gonna start to give this a turn. You can see that my oven is still pretty cold because the pizza doesn't have much color to it. This pizza is gonna be more in line with that Neo-Neapolitan look. It's gonna be crispier, it's gonna be more uniform brown around the edge. The point of this going into the oven, the way that I pulled the peel really fast, dropped it specifically on the point so it matched the way that it was on the peel. If you put the pizza in the oven and you go too slow, you might see that this is stretched really long. Don't worry, I promise you it's still gonna taste great. You can see how uniform the color of this pizza is. It's because my oven is baking at a lower temperature. We're not baking at 900 degrees. This is closer to that Neo-Neapolitan, where I was closer to about 700. You guys saw earlier on my gun, it was about almost 750 at the dome. So this pizza baked for probably about 3.5 to 4 minutes instead of 2.5 minutes. So that's why you see this. But the advantage is that you're always gonna end up with a pizza that's a little bit crispier. As far as the bottom goes, the bottom looks really beautiful, actually. You can see how nice it looks. This is actually another really good time that if you even wanted to put just a touch more olive oil in the top of this, it wouldn't hurt anybody's feelings. Even if you wanted to put a little flake salt, like some Maldon on top, that's another really beautiful finishing step. And then once you go in and you cut this, you can hear how crispy it is because it baked a little bit longer. So if you have one of those home ovens in the backyard, one of those Unis or Gosnis or all those different types of ovens, you can actually bake at a lower temperature if this is the type of pizza that you like to make. Now, because this baked a little bit longer, you can see that this sits a little bit more rigid because the bottom is crispier. This is not traditional for a Neapolitan pizza. However, this is traditional for a Neo-Neapolitan pizza, and that's actually what we created. The next pizza that I'm making in this Neapolitan series is the Margherita pizza. I'm making the traditional Margherita. Let's prep a couple ingredients that we didn't already do. This is fresh mozzarella called fior di latte. I'm gonna show you the specific cut that we use for Neapolitan pizza. You gotta remember that we're not looking to cut this like in giant pieces, because if this pizza is only cooking in 90 seconds, I want the pizza to have cheese that's melted or at least warm curds on top of it instead of looking like it's all melted and disintegrated to like fondue. I cut these in pieces maybe about 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm turning them sideways, and then I'm gonna make these very thin side cuts like this, maybe about 1/4 inch thickness, not very thick at all. And the idea is that I'm not gonna use all this mozzarella. This one ball of mozzarella was about 8 ounces, and I only need maybe about 3 ounces for about a 12-inch Margherita pizza. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna cut all this down, and then whatever's left over, put it in a container and save it, because if you don't use it all, you can at least save it for 2-3 days after you open it inside the refrigerator. This is the kind of thing that we're looking for. Something like a cut like this, very thin, and this is perfect for our pizza. My dough, you can see, is really gassy. This dough has been sitting out for a few hours, and this is easily about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The gases that are built in here are from fermentation, so it's actually a really good sign. It means that our yeast is working, it did its thing, and that those gases actually flavored this dough the way we want it to. I'm gonna take my fingers and I'm gonna press down from the center. I'm gonna leave one finger from each side, and if you need some help doing that, use your finger as a guide, and then with the other finger, poke right next to it, so you know where that one finger from the edges. And the idea is that as you come around, you're gonna be saving that one finger from the edge. We call this the cornicione, and that's what gives us that beautiful rise on the side of the pizza dough. Anywhere you see these big puffy marks, same thing, just kind of rip those open and it'll let some of those extra gases out. Once you're at this point that you've got this nice uniform edge all the way around, I'm gonna take my hand from the side and press from 12 o'clock down to 3 o'clock. I'm gonna pull the dough down at this point. So if my cornicione is here, I'm pulling like this. I'm gonna hold the dough at 3 and pull to 7. Turn, 12 to 3, pull, flip onto my hand and give it a quarter turn. Once you have this, that you went all the way around, you should have something that resembles kind of a circle. Another really easy way, once you have it to this point that you could stretch the dough, this only needs to be 12 inches. So put your arms up, your hands like you're boxing, your knuckles here line up with the edges of the cornicione. Here and here, pull 12 inches, hold it up to 12 o'clock, put one hand at 3 o'clock, the other one at 9, pull to 12 o'clock, and you'll see all of a sudden, I've got this pizza now that's 12 inches, and I'm not worried if it's not a full, beautiful circle yet, because I have one more opportunity to adjust it before we launch it into the oven. Now let's build the classic margherita pizza. To this, I've got that beautiful pizza sauce, that Neapolitan sauce. Anytime the sauce is sitting, make sure you give it a stir, because if that salt hasn't dissolved all the way, that little bit of a stir will keep everything in the party, and it'll keep somebody from getting a really salty pizza at the end. I'm gonna do about 1.5 spoons of sauce. I'm gonna make sure that I'm not going over the edge or that one finger of the cornicione, and that's why I like to use a spoon. I have more control. I've got the back of the spoon that I'm using right now, and then I'm turning to the front of the spoon. And then with the middle of the spoon, I'm kind of just going around and checking my work. If there's a little spot that maybe needs a little bit of sauce, don't be afraid, just go get a little and give it a little dab like that. It shouldn't be super saucy, unless you like a lot of sauce. But I'm gonna tell you that if you're baking high temperature, 7, 8, 900 degrees Fahrenheit, and this pizza's cooking in, let's say, under 3 minutes, balance of the ingredients on top will give you a better baked pizza. So don't get fooled. From here, the next ingredient is fresh basil. I got a couple beautiful leaves of basil. Take the leaves of basil, give them a little tear. We're not making an art project, and kind of just put them wherever they land. I like to put the basil directly on the sauce, especially if you're working in a lower temperature oven, because now that we're going to put the fior di latte on top, this fresh cow's milk mozzarella, it's going to help kind of protect that basil. And you'll notice that as I'm putting this down, I kind of separated the amount into 2 hands, and I'm kind of going all around. From here, I'm going to give a number 6 of olive oil, and then I'm going to take some Parmigiano Reggiano. You could tell it's the real stuff because of the rind, and I'm going to grate this with a microplane. This is my favorite way to do this. I say we're going to make it snow all over the top of this pizza, and this is beautiful. Actually, there's a lot of people who even like to put a second application of that Reggiano when it comes out of the oven. Now, this pizza is ready to go into the oven. I'm going to grab the pizza from under the cornicione, and I'm going to pull until I'm evenly in a circle on top of this pizza. That's why I said earlier, don't worry about it if you're stretching it and it's not completely round. I'm gonna go into the oven. I'm gonna find the spot on the deck. I'm gonna go all the way in, stop, and I'm gonna pull straight back. That was a tug, just like this. At this point now, if you see inside the oven, I'm looking at the part of the pizza that's closest to the fire. I'm gonna go in from the side, come underneath the pizza, and I'm gonna give it a turn. And now you can see those classic leopard spots. I'm gonna put the pizza directly back into the spot that it was baking on, and this is gonna ensure that the bottom of the pizza is not too burnt. This is gonna be that classic 90-second pizza, and if you do it in these steps, you'll notice that when it comes out, I'm gonna show you that the pizza is actually crispy. I know a lot of people say Neapolitan pizza is never crispy, it's soggy, it's all that. It's because they didn't make it right. And if you follow these simple steps, just like I showed you, you're gonna have perfect pizzas every single time. Now, I'm looking at this again. I can see that the cornicione is popped beautifully. I can see that the tomato sauce and the cheese is now starting to bubble. So we're getting very close to this pizza being done. Is this the most beautiful margherita pizza you've ever seen? Everything I love about this pizza is here. I've got this beautiful edge. The temperature maybe is just a hair under 900 degrees. That's why it still has that classic Neo-Neapolitan look where it's kind of nice and browned, but you can see some of those leopard spots. This pizza definitely baked in under 2 minutes. So it still has all those classic characteristics. The cheese is beautifully melted. It's not soupy. The crust, you could hear how crispy this crust is, and it's full of air. Light, airy, digestible, everything that we talk about in a really good Italian pizza. On my top 10 list, this was a tie for second with the marinara pizza. That fresh basil pops out right away. I got this right here. You can see how beautiful and green this basil stayed. Look at this, if I can get it up. Look at how beautiful that is. Look at the bottom. It's not burnt. It's beautiful and spotted. All the characteristics of a properly baked pizza. That, my friends, is the ultimate Napolitana pizza at home. I hope you guys learned something. Go to the description below. There's a lot of QR codes to all the links to all the ingredients that I love, all the equipment that I love. And if you like this, make sure you share it with your friends, like, subscribe to my channel, and I can't wait to see you all in class soon. Ciao.